Hi, everybody. This is Heather Alexandra, your content and community manager here at Double Fine, and we are showing off something pretty darn great. I think we're going to be able to do this for Accessibility Awareness Day. We're going to run through our assist features and accessibility features for Psychonauts 2, which ranges from everything from subtitles to a lot of other very cool things. And joining me to share information about all this is our senior producer, Kevin Johnson. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Heather.
How are you doing? Full disclosure for people listening at home. We've tried to record this twice. Working remote is difficult. But we are very excited to share these with you, which is why we've just been sitting here trying to make sure this video gets made, because Kevin, there's a lot of cool stuff.
There is. Yeah, the team has done, I think, a great job in making sure that we've got some great accessibility options. And so what we're looking at now is what we call our first boot options. So the very first time you load up the game and get through the various, corporate logos and all that, you're presented with this screen, which is meant to just help you get a subset of settings in place to make sure that you're able to get all the content in the way you want it right from the start. We have a intro video that comes up. We want to make sure that if you want subtitles on, you're able to have those on, to make sure that your language is set, so you can set your text language. If the default for your system is not what you want to play the game in, you're able to change that. And we have a couple other options here. Increased font legibility refers to the fact that the default font that we use is a custom font that we kind of refer to as the wonky font. It's very stylized.
We have a few in-house fonts that we use for a variety of things. This one has a nice Psychonauts feel, but who knows? There might be reasons why people want something a little bit more simplified and direct for their font. And so having this option lets you toggle to the other font.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can decide how you want that font to look. And then subtitles on and off is a straight toggle there. Larger subtitles, which is, as it says, just will allow for larger subtitles if that helps with readability.
Yes.
For people who want that.
And then this is my favorite one down here at the bottom. I've told you this many times now. This is I do think that this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's a great feature as well. And so as players explore the world, there's a wide variety of signage that they'll come across in the game. And so this option will allow for those signs to be localized to the same language as the chosen text language. So I think like the example that you used is like if you were to come across a stop sign,
yes,
if this option were turned on, instead of saying stop in English, it would say stop in the selected language
it could
of
be
the game.
French or Spanish or Portuguese or anything. Well, not anything. The options that we have, we can't unfortunately do every language. But there are localizers that we've worked with to make sure that these things are as needed, because I think you sort of have two options that you want. You can either have it off and sort of treat the world as, being set where it is, which is vaguely North American-ish. I don't know exactly where Psychonauts HQ is. Who knows, really? And then also,
I think vaguely North America.
Vaguely North America-ish, and the timeline is probably like vaguely 80s or 90s-ish. Everything's a little hazy. But then also you have the option to have signs in the environment that are of your chosen language, because that can also just help with finding your way around, right? Right. It just kind of removes another bit of processing and kind of, I don't know, I think it's cool. I think it's cool to have extra assets, because I know that's work, right? That's work to get that done. But it's hard for me to think of, and this is not a thing where I'm patting us on the back too much, but I am a little. It's hard to think of many other games that have an option like this. When I heard about this, I thought it was really unique and kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely something I don't think you see in too many games, but we felt it was something important to do. And, so we made sure to plan for the extra work that would be necessary in order to have the versions of all the various signage localized to the different languages, so that if someone were to turn this option on, they're able to fully enjoy the game with those signs in place.
I think it's a good example of, and we'll see all sorts of options, because this is far from being all the options we have in game for assist features. But, I've talked with you about how accessibility, and this is something that was stressed to us through talks we had with Microsoft and other folks at Xbox Game Studios and things like that, where accessibility is not this thing that you sort of tack on at the end of a process. It's something that you integrate into your processes, your design processes, because in order to get certain features done, for instance, because it does involve additional assets, you need to plan for it. You need to have the time for it. So making sure that accessibility is something that's in your pipelines is really important. And it leads to cool features like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
like
now...
now we'll move on. So after you've set this up the way you want to,
the game starts.
The next thing you'll come across is our mental health advisory.
Oh, that's right. This is this. I keep on jumping the gun because I keep on thinking, because there is a game start thing, but we do have the mental health advisory.
Yeah, and so the game takes on a number of serious mental conditions, and while we've created abstractions of them in the form of the various forms in the mental worlds that you're in, they're still very real conditions.
Yes.
And, being exposed to some of this stuff can be upsetting or triggering. And so we felt it was important to be upfront with players about this so they can prepare themselves for that. But then also, we point out that, if anything in this game upsets you, or if just in general you find yourself in a space where you think you might want to reach out for some help with regards to any mental condition you might be dealing with, the link to takethis.org is there. They're a fantastic organization, and they can help people find resources that will help them get through whatever it is that they might be going through.
Yeah. Because the game, obviously the way that we handle some of these topics tends to be interpretive. It tends to be using mechanics or level design in order to express an experience or a feeling. So it's not necessarily, the strictest depiction of a thing, but it still is a depiction of, for instance, because we've revealed some of this through Game Informer now. There's a level that involves things like gambling addiction or things like that, and other things in the game. And these are topics that people struggle with, or things that people have struggled with. So, for some people it might not always be, as lighthearted. So we always want people to know that there are resources for them if they need it. That we are very specific that this is a game with an entire level full of teeth. If you don't like teeth, good news is it's like the first level, so you could probably give it to somebody else to play if you needed to. But there is a level with a lot of teeth. But ultimately, we really do want people to feel comfortable and safe playing this game, exploring these topics, and then also just in real life. I think it's easy for a studio person to say we value our players, but we do. You are the reason why we do this, and what matters to us is that you are enjoying the game in a way that feels safe, and that also just in life you are feeling okay, and that you have resources if you need them. If you are ever feeling down, because I struggle with depression, I'll be open about that. there are resources, and you are someone who matters. We care about you. You have people in your life who care about you. If you're having certain struggles, there are pathways through those struggles. And Psychonauts 2 is a game about healing. And so we want you to be able to experience it and feel comfortable and secure throughout that entire experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So we'll keep moving. Now we'll get to the part where pay no attention.
Well, we can't show that. Blah 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 blah. That was the thing that I was expecting, because there is an animation at the start of the game to let people know the story of Psychonauts, and also Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin. But this is the title screen, the main menu of Psychonauts 2. And now we have some more options to show off.
Yep, and so we'll jump into the settings, and we'll start with the Assistive Features. And so off the bat, we allow some options that will help people tailor the gameplay experience to their liking. And so the first option is the ability to toggle fall damage, where if you miss a jump or land in some water, Raz will typically take damage from that, or if you fall from too far of a height, that will also result in Raz taking damage. If you don't want to worry about having that penalty for missing jumps during the platforming sections, you're able to turn off that damage.
Yeah, just get rid of it.
Yeah. Invincibility will basically turn off almost all other forms of damage to Raz, so getting hit by enemies, getting hit by environmental hazards, that kind of thing. And so if you want to use that as a means to make parts of the game, either, if you're hitting a difficulty spike or just don't want to worry as much about that, that's an option for you. And then we have what we call narrative combat, which basically greatly increases the amount of damage that Raz does in combat. So it'll take fewer hits to defeat enemies, which again is just another way to kind of tailor the combat experience. So if you want to focus more on enjoying the narrative and less about those enemy encounters, you're able to toggle this, and it can help you make the game feel the way you want it to feel.
Or even if you reach an encounter that you are finding difficult, toss this on and go for it. A thing that we really want to stress is that there is no quote-unquote intended way to play Psychonauts besides just having fun and enjoying yourself. These assist features, we started to see them really popularized with games like Celeste, or other platforming games really started to add those in, and so incorporating these in here means that we can help folks in a variety of different ways, whether that's people who have physical needs that might, make platforming a little tricky, so they want to turn off fall damage, whether or not that is widening the range of our age range for players. So you want to, your kid wants to play this game but they're having trouble, that can be an option. Or if you're an older player and you can't quite do it like you used to, you can do that. I think these gameplay features allow us to address accessibility in a broad variety of ways, which is to say, to address people with specific physical needs, but also with different skill levels or things like that too. So I'm really glad that these are in the game, because there are some tough moments in the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then to your point about there not being an intended way other than to enjoy yourself, it's worth noting that enabling these options does not interfere with any of the achievements of the game.
You still get your Chibos.
Like that. Yeah, so I've certainly seen in some games where these types of options may be available, but then it either turns off achievements or limits the levels you can go to, or there's some kind of there's like that other side to turning them on, and we didn't want to have that, because again, it really is about allowing players to enjoy the game on their terms. So feel free to turn these on, and you'll still be able to collect all your achievements if that's something that you want to make sure that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about letting you dictate the terms of the experience to whatever you want, which is good. But there's more assist features beyond gameplay.
Yeah, and so we've got a lot of these user interface features which are there in that first boot menu. One thing we also have here is the camera shake intensity. There are a number of people at Double Fine who find themselves susceptible to motion sickness while playing, and so this is an option to adjust the camera shake during certain parts of the game.
Yes.
To try to mitigate that for people, and so you can either turn it all the way down to 0 if you want it off entirely, or if you want to kind of have that feedback but just not as much as the default because you find that a little uncomfortable, you can find the number on the slider that works best for you.
Again, allowing an important thing for accessibility is allowing people to more deeply customize that experience. Instead of just a toggle, now you can choose the exact specific amount that gets you, even with camera shake, the experience that you want.
Yeah. And then this one personally important to me, we have a color blindness compensation toggle here, which will apply filters to compensate for the different types of color blindness that people may be experiencing. And so you're able to move through these and see the effect on the game so that you can pick the option that works best for you. I say it's something personal to me because I am a colorblind gamer, and I have experienced games where my color blindness created a barrier. My first big experience with that was in college with a particular game that my friends really liked to play, but I had an issue distinguishing between the yellows and the greens in the game, and because the game was very color-based in how you scored, it basically blocked me from being able to compete at the same level, even though, in terms of my strategy and my reaction times were right there with my friends. At a certain point, the fact that I couldn't tell these colors apart just kind of kept me out of the experience in the same way that they were able to, and I ultimately stopped playing while they all played, and it's something that really stuck with me, and it's something that if I have the ability to help other people with in games, I want to make sure that we have things like these filters, but then also even at the point of design, saying, hey, if this is something that's going to be color-based, let's also make sure that everything that has a different color also has a different shape, so that, we're going to have these colorblind options, but also at the design level, let's make sure that we're not relying solely on color.
Right. Again, one of those things where you integrate it more completely into your design process, right? It's not just, well, we'll do a filter afterwards. It's, let's make sure that this is something we consider in our art design, in our level design, in our asset design, because, again, we want as many people as possible to be playing these games. You were talking about your own experiences with color blindness. I have a father, as most people presumably have had fathers. My father is colorblind, and he liked to play games, but there have been a couple games in the past where he just wasn't able to do puzzles because the puzzles were explicitly based around color, but they didn't really have the sort of options for a filter, or didn't perhaps even consider, I can't talk for anybody else's design experience, but perhaps didn't even consider that a colorblind player would be playing that game. And so here it's something that we really wanted to have in. I'm very glad that we do have in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some more options.
We have more,
that are
even more.
In the controls settings. We can start with the fact that I won't jump into that particular page, but the control bindings are there. The bindings are completely remappable.
Yes.
Including overlapping. So we've done the test case where we assign almost every function to one button.
To one button.
Yeah, it's technically possible. I would probably say not a recommended way of
jumping and side blasting and gliding all at the same time.
All of it on one button.
Yes.
It all technically works, so you're able to remap the controls as you see fit. Again, the vibration slider, so this allows you, instead of just a binary on-off toggle, you can set the haptic feedback, the rumble, to a level that you find comfortable. If the default level is too much, but you still want to experience it, you can find the setting that's right for you.
Mm-hmm. Find that perfect little happy medium.
Yeah. Camera sensitivity sliders for if you're playing with a controller or mouse. I'm playing on the Steam version.
We're on the PC version right now.
That's there. Inverted cameras, because people who want inverted camera controls really want inverted camera controls.
Some people love them. Some people really love them.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that. I guess
no,
it's
not
more
at all.
Just, I had a number of people constantly prodding about getting this option implemented up until the point at which it was.
Yes, on the team. Just people saying, when are we gonna, hey Kevin, when are we gonna have those inverted controls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was that, which is great. I'm glad that people are passionate about that and that we can have these options to allow people to have that. Camera assist, which is on by default. What this does is, as you move through the game, the camera will, by default, make an effort to kind of point you towards the main path and show you where to go next. But you can turn this off and then have fully manual control over the camera. If that's something that you want to do, if you just don't like the idea of the game occasionally nudging the camera for you.
And then we have a couple things that are tied to platforming and movement.
So the triple jump to glide option is there to kind of streamline a particular movement flow of the game. So we have jumps where you'll want to do the standard double jump and then activate the levitation power in order to go into a glide. And in the default control scheme, that's going to be a second button press, typically in quick succession. Turning this option on will allow you to just hit jump a third time. So hit it once for single jump, twice for the double jump, and a third time to activate the glide, so that you can just keep that motion all on one button and streamline that process. And then this other one is the ability to then, if you'd like the ability to go from the glide to landing on the levitation ball, as some people find traversal on the levitation ball to be preferable. Again, rather than having to time your levitation power button press accordingly, it would just require another press of the jump button. Just a way to streamline that process if it's something you find yourself wanting to do a lot, and perhaps the multiple input option doesn't feel great to you.
Right.
This is a way to try a different way of doing it.
Because the default is that you can map 4 powers to your shoulder buttons and your bumpers at any time, and that includes levitation. So normally you would jump and maybe then hit your button, but this sort of automates that in a variety of different ways. I know that I really want to try the triple jump one next time I play the game, which again, it's releasing. You can play through all the game basically. I will probably try using the triple jump to glide option, because I think that sounds really fun.
Yeah, there are actually a number of people on the team that greatly prefer that as just a way that they want to play the game versus the default control scheme.
Yeah. And then we have some things that affect this first one affects combat a little bit, and then the other one will affect general like user experience. So the first one is lock on.
Yes. So we have the ability to lock onto enemies while you're in combat, and by default, that is a button press. So you press to turn on the lock mode, and then you will press it again to turn it off. And you have the option to turn that into either a hybrid system or a hold system. And so the hold is kind of as it sounds. You'll have to keep holding the button in order to keep the lock-on mode on. And then the hybrid system is kind of an in-between where you can click and hold to move the lock-on target
From
around,
target to target,
and then click again in order to turn it off. So it's just a different feel to the lock-on mode to allow people to find the version that they think works best for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other one will involve combat to an extent, but also just general platforming and puzzling, because this helps you decide how you want to go into the power selection menu.
Yeah, and so by default, it's a hybrid system of pressing a button and then kind of holding the stick to swirl around a radial menu in order to select your powers, and then that can be changed into a hold system where you'll have to hold the button in order to keep the power menu up, which if you chose that could end up being maybe a little bit faster if you find that to be a bit more natural. And then the press system will require kind of each phase of the radial power menu to be an explicit press in order to go through.
Press to bring it up.
I think you described it once as like almost like a pause menu kind of thing.
Press to bring it up and then select and then press again to exit, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is...
And so those two were really about just being able to have a different input path for both the lock-on and the power menu.
Yeah, because there's plenty of times in the game, whether it's combat or, you're exploring and you see, we for Game Informer, they just showed off a new power of ours called Mental Connection, which does a variety of different things, but it's also partially about navigating the environment. So say you're in a level somewhere and you see a mental connection node and you're like, oh, well, it's not bound to any of my buttons. This will just allow you to hop into the power selection menu and swap it out in the way that feels the most natural and comfortable to you.
Yeah.
Yes. And then
then just the last bits
some of the sound stuff.
We've got some audio options, just sliders to control the main music, sound effects, voice, ambient. So, if you want to make sure that the voices are coming through nice and clear, you can keep that up and toggle the rest down. If you want to enjoy all of the very awesome music that is in the game, you can make sure that that's up.
That's true. Peter McConnell and all some really good music in there.
Oh yeah, there is one particular part where obviously
we all have a moment where we're like, oh, the music is really good. I like some of the overworld stuff quite a bit. Is my thing that I'll say.
Yeah, there's one little sequence that we're close to wrapping up right now that
I think I know which one you're talking about.
But yeah, I'll just tease it and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it'll all be very good. But also, hey, if you want to really make sure that you're getting the plot, of course you can just toggle stuff down so you can hear Richard Horvitz as Raz and Nikki Rapp as Lily and all those wonderful folks. Jack Black is in there, other cool people in our games. Which is nice. But again, these features, all of them are here mostly to ensure that you have the experience that is as fun and as comfortable for you as possible. And again, we want to stress that these are things that we try to take into consideration very early on in our design process, but Psychonauts has been in development for a fair bit of time. And there are some cases where maybe there are oversights, and so if you're a player who has specific needs and you ever want to offer feedback on this sort of thing, you can always reach out to like me on Twitter or like the Double Fine account or something, and we're always open to hearing player feedback. That doesn't mean it will automatically, 2 days later, it'll be in the game or something. But as we move forward, especially with new projects, but also as we continue to think about Psychonauts, and this is a great thing to say, post-launch, figuring out the ways that we can best accommodate players is important to us. We've had talks with players with a variety of different needs, including players who are blind or players with dyslexia or dyspraxia. We've talked to a variety of different people, and it's a process to expand our options further and further to make sure that everyone feels welcome and welcome to play the game, and also they are able to play the game in a way that is comfortable, regardless of whether or not that is a physical need, or you just want to adjust the skill level a little bit, the difficulty options a little bit. Accessibility is a really broad thing, so we've been trying to do our best to do these, and I'm very glad that we have all these options.
Yeah, me as well. I said this is something that I feel very passionate about, and I know a lot of people on the team are very passionate about, and so anything that we can do to allow as many people to enjoy the game as possible, we want to try to meet those needs. And so like Heather said, if you have any suggestions for this game or anything else that as we announce future titles, please let us know what you'd like to see to make sure that we are making games that can be as inclusive as possible, and knowing that for us means accommodating anybody who wants to play, regardless of what those needs might be. If
you message us, like I said, I think we're pretty close to content lock on P2. I know there's probably some art stuff that's getting adjusted and things like that, but we are locking things down, which doesn't mean, for the record, people at home, that the game is coming like tomorrow or something. It is coming this year. It takes time to get a game where you want it to be.
Shipping games is hard.
Yes, and making sure features are in game is hard, and working in game is hard. But part of the work that we've done is focus on these, and we're very happy to share them with you. But until we get to see you again, this was Heather and Kevin, and thank you all very much for watching, and we hope you enjoy Psychonauts 2 when it releases.
Bye.
Bye.